Hi there, it's Ben here from 60-Second Film School and Ben&Jack Studio. This tutorial is going to cover importing edited footage from an Adobe Premiere Pro project into Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve. We're going to be taking a look at the DaVinci layout, using nodes, color correction, masking, and a whole lot of other cool features in this outrageously powerful bit of free software. Let's get into it. First thing you're going to need to do when you've finished your Premiere edit is export a Final Cut Pro XML. This will create a readable file for DaVinci. Export your file somewhere handy and then open up DaVinci. Open that bad boy. As a piece of free software, DaVinci is absolutely incredible. We have started using it at Ben&Jack Studio to grade all of our projects, and the extra professional level features in it have really skyrocketed our production level. We're going to start a new project. From there, we need to import the XML we made earlier. So go to File and Import Timeline. Get in there. Make sure you're happy with the settings. DaVinci will urge you to keep your settings from Premiere, which will make life easier. Click OK, and then all of your clips will open up, hopefully in order, into a timeline. Woohoo! A very quick look at the different page layouts in DaVinci. The windows go from left to right. The first is Media, where you will import and arrange all of your footage, if you're not doing it via XML. The Edit window, you can edit footage here, but as we've already made our cuts in Premiere, we won't be needing this. Fusion is a visual effects 3D composites. I'm going to avoid this completely because I have no idea about that stuff. Shocking. Then of course, color, which is what we'll be coming back to because that's the whole point of this video. Fairlight is for audio editing. And then Deliver, which is where we're going to create our graded file, which will be then sent back to Adobe Premiere Pro. Now back to color. I always have the video scopes open. These are very similar to scopes that you'll see in all the other major editing software. This is the playback monitor where you'll view your grades and all your changes. This last window is where your nodes will be created. Nodes can be thought as edits on your color correction or color grading. Each one can contain a new set of parameters or different effects. They can all be created individually so that when you change one, only that effect changes. Here is your clips timeline where all of your lovely footage sits ready to be called into action. Here we have our curves, our qualifier, mask window, tracker, blur, key, swing, and 3D. Don't know what any of that stuff is. When color correcting any footage, you want to make sure you are starting with even looking footage throughout the edit. The waveform on any software is a visual representation of shadows, midtones, and highlights. And we are looking to move these shadows or lift the shadows until they're hovering just above the 0 on the waveform. Our highlights, which we control with this gain control, want to be sat just below 1023 or at the top there. And the midtones we are looking to squeeze together to get the overall exposure looking good. The vectors work great, but you can obviously monitor the picture yourself as you have the final say over how the picture is going to look. You're the boss. Once you're happy with your exposures, we're going to white balance. In the bottom left-hand corner here, we have a white balance dropper. Click onto that and find somewhere on your shot that should be white. Once clicked, DaVinci will make the necessary changes to make sure that you've got perfect white balance. Looks like this one was pretty bang on in the first place. What a hero. It's here down by the color wheels where you'll find controls for contrast, saturation, and hue. Not to mention temperature, tint, shadows, and highlights. For this particular shot, I wanted to affect just the skin tones. So we add a node just for that. Once we've added a node, we make sure it's active on the node tree by dragging the node onto the grade. We need to select the skin tones to work with on this node, so we dive down to the qualifier where we can pick the color with the color picker. To select the skin tone you want to work with, hover over the tones of the skin and click and hold whilst moving over a good selection of these skin tones. We can move the width and the central point on this slider. In some instances, it will be very difficult to pick out just the skin tones without having similar colors like the shirt here affected also. We can take a look at which tones are selected by clicking the highlights button here. The matte finesse values will help us to clean the black and white here so we can get a more pinpoint area to work in. When the skin tone node is selected, only the skin tones will be affected. Also, any other adjustments that you make will be effective only on these skin tones, unless we change node. So we can change saturation, contrast, shadows, etc. So I'm going to push the saturation to make our subject really stand out from the background. What I thought would look great for this shot would be to have the performer in front of a teal coloured fence rather than the green. Similarly to the skin tones, we want to highlight just the colours of the fence onto a new node so we can change just that colour. It's the same process. Qualifier, colour picker, take a selection of the green, and clean the blacks and whites. So as I go down to the hue control, I can move that up and down until I get to the color that I want the fence to be. Magic. Now she's popping. It looks great if I do say so myself. This footage is from a music video for the song British Weather by Luna LePage. So in true British style, we got a bit sarcastic with the colors and have gone for a really saturated, punchy look throughout the video. What happens if you have other similar shots that you want to look the same? Instead of going through the whole process again, you can simply create a still by right-clicking on the picture. Create a still. That still will appear in the gallery over on the left. When the shot you are working on is highlighted in the timeline, you just need to then hover over the graded gallery clip, right-click, and then apply grade. This isn't perfect, but it's a lot closer, and it's now possible to go in and fine-tune and make those tweaks to make it perfect. This brings us to another really helpful feature, split screen. Make sure the clips you are working on and from are highlighted, and click the split screen here. The image is a lot flatter and washed out in the clip on the left, so I'm going to create a new node. Starting with the shadows, I'm going to bring them right down. Same with the midtones. And then lastly, the highlights. A bit of extra punch with the contrast. Looking good. After making these adjustments, it's clear that the saturation in the skin tones are a bit higher than I would like. So going back to just the skin tones node, I'm going to adjust them and bring them down until I have a much more even match. What has appeared in this clip is this greenish coloured halo around the hair. To fix this, I'm going to go back into the matte finesse settings and tweak the clean blacks parameter until that halo disappears. Boom, boom, boom. Lastly, the liquid in the glass looks flat and washed out, and I really want to work on just that area. So I'm going to draw a mask around this glass. Always a new node. In the interest of time, I haven't renamed nodes, but the way you would do that would be to right-click and change the name of that node to make sure you can keep everything organized. We then go down to the window and we're going to choose the curve tool. This will allow you to draw a line around the glass. We know that any edits will now be just within that mask, so I'll take up the saturation and add a bit of contrast. You can toggle any node on and off to give you an idea of how that effect is affecting the image. The problem with this shot is that the camera moves, and therefore the mask will not be affecting the correct area. Tracking within DaVinci is super easy. Click the tracker, hit play, And in a magical moment of awesomeness, the drink will now be tracked. Bingo! What's really cool is that in DaVinci you can access your camera RAW settings. When you open up the RAW page, you'll be able to get into the RAW settings and change them. All the normal things like ISO, color temperature, your color space, gamma curves, etc., depending what systems you're using. As we can see on this clip here, which was just a little bit too dark, we can jump straight into the RAW settings on the red, bump the ISO up slightly, and then we've got a much better base to start grading from. Equally, if you overexpose when shooting, then it's a lot better to jump into the RAW settings and play around with your exposure before you start the color correction and the grade. Inbuilt noise reduction on DaVinci is absolutely brilliant. If we moved all the way across here to the right, we get the motion effects. In motion effects, we have two types of noise reduction. Very quickly, temporal noise reduction is time-based. If you use temporal noise reduction, DaVinci will take the average of 5 frames of what noise results it finds within those 5 frames. This is good when there's a lot of movement in your shot. What I tend to use most is spatial noise reduction, and that's more about using one frame and analyzing just that one frame for noise and then applying that noise reduction across the whole clip. There are a whole bunch of different parameters that you can set. Like anything within our art, the more experimentation you do with the different parameters, the better results that you'll get. Always a new node. I find that using one or the other, or a little bit of a mixture of both, always gets the job done, but it might take a bit of experimentation. And I'm going to keep the Luma and Chroma linked, and we can already see there that that's making a difference. I'm going to set the temporal noise reduction to analyze 3 frames. Again, I'm going to keep these parameters the same. And I'm going to notch up the Luma to about 25. And again, we can see that that's doing a really good job at reducing the noise, but not giving us that really blurry effect that noise reduction can give. Toggle on and off to see the difference. And I'm happy with that. I'm just going to zoom into the picture so you can really see how it's going to be affected. And that gives us a much better idea of how the noise reduction is affecting the picture. Lovely stuff. Consider your noise reduced. When you've done all of your edits, your color balancing and your color grading, you are now ready to export. You want to click on the deliver window, and depending on whether you render the clips out individually or as one big file is dependent on your requirements. I'm happy that this big clip will just drop straight back into my edit, as I know that edit's done and dusted. So I will render just as one clip. QuickTime, high quality ProRes, choose your resolution. When you add to render queue, you will be prompted to give it a name. And then you're ready to start render. When that is done, you can open up Premiere again. Import a file as you would normally. And as you drag that clip over your original edit, you'll see that it sits on top perfectly. I hope this tutorial has been helpful. I'm still very much learning the ropes and consider myself a DaVinci noob, but these were the things that I've found myself looking up the most, so hopefully this will get you up and running on DaVinci. Thank you very much from Ben and Jack at 60 Second Film School, and enjoy DaVinci.